are now tuned to BS3 Network. BS3 Network, changing the way you watch TV.
It's Queen 3 and King. It's Queen 3 and King. It's Queen 3 and King. Queen 3 and King, we the team, it's going down. We the talk of the town, it's going down. We royalty, wear our crowns, it's going down. Tune in now, it's going down. Queen 3 and King, we the team, it's going down. We the talk of the town, it's going down. We royalty, wear our crowns, it's going down. Tune in now, it's going down. It's Queen 3 and King on BS3 Network.
Welcome to another episode of Queen 3 and King. I am your host, King Dawk. We also have another special guest host in the building today. Again, that's Mr. Gary Freeman, and you see the educator queen here. And we also have Pastor D.P. Dawkins that should be on shortly. He's having a bit of technical difficulty. So hopefully he will be on here in just a moment. And work those out. But before we get to that and get him on, let's go ahead and do our introductions. Again, today's topic is Black marriage, Black divorce. This is part 2. Again, Gary was with us last week. We talked last week, some of the things that we talked about with some of the cycles we have to break, breaking each other on picking our battles. We talked about strategic efforts against the Black community in terms of marriage. We gave some statistics with regard to if you were a family, or you were a product of a divorced marriage and whatnot. And again, we have a lot of meat left on that bone, so we're going to try to dissect the rest of that today. Again, if you're in the chat room, please let us know your thoughts. Your thoughts are very big in terms of what we do here on the show. So getting your thoughts and feedback and things of that nature is important. So make sure you share your thoughts with us as well. But before we go any further, let's go ahead and do our introduction. So again, the season queen is out today. She is been island hopping, and the baby queen will be out today taking care of one of the babies. So without further ado, let's go to the educator queen out of East Garland, Texas, by way of Tulsa, Oklahoma. There is another event coming up soon with regard to Tulsa and Okmulgee in terms of being the queen.
His brother be lying.
Hopefully she will participate and show well in that. But she also goes by Meba. She goes by TT, and she was caught cussing in a live video on Facebook this weekend. Talk to the people, Queen.
And cussing hard. Do you hear me? I went back. I said Mika.
And when you went back and said Mika, what did Mika say?
Girl, it is what it is.
Okay. All right. And next, we have the philosopher himself. That is Gary, the philosopher of Freeman. I heard somebody pop on. There he is. Mr. Gary, talk to us, sir. How have you been today? Were you excited and diving back into this topic?
I am. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation. Looking forward to hearing what the pastor has to say and offering that spiritual guidance and leadership along with our kind of secular guidance and opinion. So I'm interested to see the two worlds and how they, for lack of a better term, marry and what we're going to get out of this. I think it's going to be a great show.
Right on. Agreed. So he is here now. We have Pastor D.P. Dawkins in the building, Bobby Ray's son. What's going on? Pastor?
Hey, good evening, y'all. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We got you. We
Yes.
got you. Got you.
Happy
Yeah,
to
in
be on.
fact,
Thank you for having me.
good. In fact, when I was doing my little pre-show prep a little earlier, about an hour or so ago, Bobby Ray popped into my mind because I was thinking about the aspects of the show and where I can go, and and I'm always thinking about a comedy angle as well. And so I thought to myself, I'm like, we all everybody. Well, I'm not everybody, but I'm like we related to Bobby Ray in here, and one of us that grew up under Bobby Ray roof, and one of us grew up under the roof of Bobby Ray brothers. So when it comes to talking about marriage, we got some crazy thoughts sometimes because we done seen some crazy stuff. So, so he did cross my mind and tickled me. So last week we had, so first of all, before I do that, let me just acknowledge anybody in the chat room, and of course, as always, we got Aunt Weed in the building. She goes, "Hey, my beautiful family." She had some very interesting thoughts last week on the subject. I'm sure she'll have some more this week. But last week, you weren't here, so we didn't get to get your initial thoughts on the subject. So I'll go ahead and go there with you, Pastor. So whenever you saw the topic come across, I reached out, asked if you were available for this. Black marriage, black divorce. What were your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts were that it was a fantastic subject matter, timely and well needed. But I have to be honest, it also reminded me of a few of the other shows that you've had in the past, dealing with the African American woman, and as it relates to their expectations about finding a mate. And
Yeah.
I think
Wow.
if you combine some of the shows that you've already done, we have a good framework, a good foundation that we need to delve into, because I think they're all related.
Okay.
Some of the topics that you've discussed
Wow.
in past shows, with why we have a challenge and issue related to Black marriage.
Right. Wow. Wow. Okay. See, already, uh, we come out hitting triples. We ain't coming out hitting singles. We come out hitting triples because I think that is a very well said, and it's the case. And as you said that, I'm automatically flipping through some of those episodes and some of those topics. The angry black woman topic, the why he ain't texting me back topic, so you're 100% right. There are a lot there that contribute to this particular topic. Now, let elaborate on this. You called it timely. Why did you call it timely?
I'm sorry, say it again. I didn't hear you.
You called it timely. Why did you call it timely? You call this topic a timely one. So why did you call it timely?
Well, I think it's timely because of where we are today and what we see. And I think the main problem is everybody is infatuated with social media. Everything now is electronic, social media based. Even I went to the doctor today to check in, and everything's done electronically. And I think the problem is that we allow television the television of what marriage should really look like. And so because we are now in that social media world where everything is fast and quick, now our what we believe is shaped by what we see. And so much of what we see is controlled. The narrative is controlled by social media.
Right. Okay. That's good. That's good. And then my thoughts, as soon as you start talking like that and talk about telling the vision, I started thinking about that fairy tale marriage and how that's impacted. That's another piece of this that we didn't talk about last week, right? Is how that fairy tale, right? And I'm sure you can break that word down, fairy tale. Fairy tale has contributed to our thoughts about what a marriage should be, and how erroneous that may be, and that whole Cinderella story, you want to get swept off your feet in knight in shining armor. And sometimes your knight in shining armor wear overalls every day to work. Hey,
Exactly.
you follow me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now, before we go to I want to hit Pastor on the religion aspect that we broke down last week, and let him comment on some of that. But before I do, Meek and Gary, did y'all have any thoughts from last week's show to this week's show through the course of the week? or anything that we need to include here in this initial thoughts section?
I did.
No, well, we'll get to it, but when we talked about kind of focusing on the benefits of marriage.
Right. Yes.
And there was one statistic there's a financial statistic that I
Okay.
thought really stuck out, and but we can get, and that's something that I'll elaborate on.
Awesome.
Here.
And that I got that written down. And Pastor will be able to bring a unique perspective to that as well, considering his background in the financial sector. So I think that's a great place to go. Okay, so we talked last week, Pastor. We did a lot more cussing than we're gonna do this week. And I need folks to know it ain't because Pastor gonna look at us funny. He gonna, we ain't gonna be able to come back to his church. We gonna have to give a higher love offering. None of that. It's just simply out of respect for him, and who he is. But that don't mean I won't let one slip, especially if it get good to me here. But I wanted to say that I said that to say this is that we did talk and bring up a couple of different scriptures last week, Pastor, even though you weren't here. Matthew 19:6 got brought up, and Proverbs 4:7 got brought up. So Matthew 19:6, of course, what God has joined together, let no one separate. And again, in that two, the two shall become one, right before that piece. And then Proverbs 4:7, wisdom is principle, but in all you're getting, get an understanding. So that came up. But statistics show that, again, black marriage, black divorce, some of the more predominant black religions, like Protestants, lead the category in divorce. So I just want you to talk wherever you want to go with this. How does religion impact divorce?
Well, when you start speaking of how religion impacts marriage, the first person that I think about, unfortunately, is the role that I have as a pastor. Because those are the individuals that you look to prior to a marriage. Now, I can just tell you from my firsthand experience, I will not marry anyone unless we have a conversation about roles and expectations, because I think that it doesn't matter what religion, we have to have the right expectation. You may not, you're not, this is not a this is not a Ricky and Lucy type relationship. I can give you an example. So when I was marrying my wife and we were talking, and she said, now look, this is not a situation to where you'll be Ricky and come home and I'll have on an apron looking good and have a meal that's placed on the table. Now, if you want me to be Lucy, I can be Lucy, but keep in mind that Lucy stayed at home and didn't work. And so I said, no, I'm absolutely fine with you being a career woman and working the job to, let me use a biblical term, to help meet the expectations of the house.
I heard that.
So I think that where we start is that one of the things that marriage counseling by a pastor of any sort of religion should do is to make sure that those individuals have a good understanding of what your role will be as a husband, what your role will be as a wife, expectations. And then I was reading that one of the biggest issues with marriage today is the commitment factor. And 63% of people stated that if they really and truly understood the commitment factor, that they might still be married. And that falls squarely on the role of the individuals that are performing the ceremony to make sure that you know what you're getting. This is not a ceremony about us spending money, getting dressed up, and walking down the aisle and making those commitments. We really must understand what that means. And being honest with each other in those counseling sessions, and not operating with false expectations appearing real, which the acronym is FEAR. Right. False expectations appearing real, because fear and being fake does nothing to help anyone's marriage from the very beginning. Because the person it's kind of like interviewing someone for a job. When you interview someone for a job, you hire them, and then Monday starts and it's their first day. You're wondering, where's the person that I interviewed? And I think that sometimes in marriages you have that same situation, simply because individuals aren't just open and honest in the very beginning to build that framework from the marriage.
Right. Wow, love it. And Mika and Gary, as he talks and as I kind of add follow-up questions and whatnot, please feel free to interject, or ask a question or whatever the case may be, right? So it's ironic that you went there with regard to your role on religion, because that's the follow-up question I had. And one of the questions that I want to ask you on that is, have you ever advised someone not to get married when you were counseling them prior to marriage?
Yes, sir, I have, and I remember.
Oh, wow.
I remember the situation very well.
Uh,
The bride became so upset and angry with me. We were in Mesquite near Townies. I'm not going to say anybody's name
yeah,
to protect the innocent.
yeah.
And, at the time, she was
Or
also
protect the guilty, either way.
she was also with child at the time, and so we're sitting down, and it's our third session. And as I'm sitting there, I said, I have to be honest with you. I can see some things that will cause this marriage to not work. And the two of you are not ready to be married to each other. She became mad, stormed out, peeled out in the parking lot. But thankfully, she got past it. And I think that it also takes an individual being honest and upfront that you're not ready for this.
Yeah.
And there are some signs that you see in those counseling sessions, or should see, red flags that you need to share, you need to discuss. And I think that the other thing as it relates to religion is that sometimes there are some religious differences that will impact the way children are disciplined, children are raised. And when you have religious differences that come into how we are going to bring our children into this, that is a big issue that must be resolved, especially if your religious beliefs already cause a division in the family.
Ooh, yeah, that's ironic. Mika, this is your time, but I want to see if you want to present this. I think this is a great place. You're gonna present it, but let me just ask, Pastor, this follow-up question: do you think some pastors get the same red flags that you got in this situation? I'm not necessarily the same ones, but a red flag, but they forget, or not they forget, they don't want to, quote unquote, be the bad guy and say, this is not a good idea. They tiptoe around it. Do you think that takes place some? Because you talked about the responsibility that the person who's marrying them has. Do you think sometimes they skirt that responsibility because it is a difficult one?
It absolutely it does. I believe that wholeheartedly, especially if that person is a good tithe payer.
Yeah. Wow. Ooh, I love it.
You don't want to upset.
I love it.
You don't want to upset that gold VIP tithe payer, because you know that there's a chance that this person is upset with you. They may leave your congregation and never come back. And that's the chance that you take. But I would rather be honest with someone and tell them that this is not going to work. And if you make the decision never to come back again, I'd rather you make that decision to never come back than me tell you a lie and you end up in a relationship that doesn't work, that causes you more pain than what it was intended.
Right. Love it. Love it. And then finally, Gary, you got something?
Well, it kind of, with this particular subject, it kind of piggybacks on what we talked about last week, and kind of where it all begins. Who's your first pastor? Your first pastor is usually your father or someone in your household. And so the message that person is delivering to you tends to be the message that you will carry on throughout the duration of your life. You'll have different pastors throughout your religious life, but that first one, you're probably going to have that one throughout your entire life, or at least for the remainder of their life. So that message that's being taught at home is probably even more important than that message that is being delivered by your pastor. I do commend you for telling people that, no, you're not ready. I was in marriage counseling and I saw several couples where the pastor passed that message on to them and said, no, you can't. And there were a plethora of different red flags that came up in these different scenarios. One was domestic violence. One was just spending habits. It was basically financial spending habits. There was a reason that one person couldn't control it, and the pastor said, no, you guys aren't ready. Another one was a dedication to the whole concept of religion altogether, not being equally yoked in the idea of how we are going to move forward in this as a spiritual couple. And that was another reason that was thrown up as a red flag and so that marriage was discarded. But I commend you for stepping in and saying that no, this isn't good, because that's what needs to happen. That's what a lot of turmoil could be avoided if people had enough courage to say, and I had the G rated.
I know what you was doing. I knew what you was doing, Gary. You didn't trust me. I knew what you was doing. And see, and he contemplated on saying the word nuts. He said enough nuts. That crossed his mind for a split second too. He's like, well, that's kind of NC-17. I could probably get away with that one, but let me go and keep this G.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, so I commend you for doing that, because a lot of people don't. There have been, I've had, family members and that I've talked to, and it was like, probably ain't gonna be a good idea for you to move forward with her or to move forward with him because of X, Y, and Z. And again, you get to be the bad guy, and people will remember that forever. Whether if it works out, then they kind of hate you forever. But if it doesn't work out, then they give you that, well, man, you tried to tell me, and I can always appreciate it. But again, I do. If it needs to be said, it needs to be said. So go ahead and say it.
That's right. And we says the pastor might as well tell them the truth, because they're going to get married anyway, regardless if the pastor disagree. And I'm sure you've seen that.
I've seen that too. Yeah.
Have you seen people, before I get to Mikala's scenario, have you had people go get somebody else to marry them because you said they wasn't ready and you wouldn't?
Oh yes. That couple decided that they were going to try it anyway. And they had another pastor that was going to marry them. He did one counseling session and said, I'll marry you. And thankfully, the bride did decide that, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to wait. And they ended up having a child together. They never got married. And she was very thankful that she did not, based on some of the things she found out after the fact. Yeah. But the red flags were already there. There were trust issues going into the relationship, and a house without a foundation cannot stand. And trust is the foundation of any marriage. And so there was no trust. And with no trust, there's no communication. With no communication, there are several other weaknesses in that marriage that it's just a typical case of, this is not going to work. You can go down this road if you want to, but it's just not working.
Yeah, love it. And Mika, utilizing the pastor's thought process of protecting the innocent, or I say the guilty, do your best to give your scenario, because I'm interested in what Pastor and Gary got to say about it.
Okay.
Give this scenario and see what they have to say. And again, this is based on that friend that who presented the problem to you. Okay, I'm helping you lie, so that way only one of us. Go ahead.
Okay, so my friend was getting to know someone super casual, not even 2 weeks of you just texting and calling back and forth, just getting to know someone, no big deal. It came out that I can't lie. It came out that the guy that I was getting to know, I can't lie.
Yes, you can. I done seen you tell you. I see. There you go. But go ahead. Just protect him more than you protect.
Yes,
him.
I'm not gonna say
some of those details.
I'm not gonna give any details on the guy. But came out that the guy is, and at this big age, y'all, I'm dating to marry, not just be holding hands going to the mall. If we're gonna do something, we're gonna get, it's gonna be serious. And I think you should get serious sooner than later, like with conversations and this and then so when we're talking about religion, and he said he practices, he doesn't go to church, he doesn't do anything, and if he had to practice something, it would be something outside of what I believe in, which is Jesus. Okay. So I told my brother and I told a couple people of the family, and they were like, "Oh, that's."
So let me help tell Pastor what he said. So the guy basically said, Gary, you too. The guy basically said, I don't go to church. I believe in God, but I believe in God, right? And they said, okay, well, what, religion are you? Well, if I was to associate with any right now, it would be closest to Buddhism because I meditate, and he talked about that thing, right? He's not Buddhist technically right now, but he also not Baptist. He also not Catholic. He also not Holiness. He also not, Methodist. But he said, just in my practices, what I practice on a daily basis to try to keep me, solid, I practice meditation. I'm a great person. I'm a good person. I try to be a good person to people and stuff like that. I practice meditation. So what would you say to somebody who is dating, looking for marriage? Go ahead.
But before y'all give your opinions, I addressed it. Just tell me more. What do you think? How does that go? And he kind of shied away from it. And keep in mind, we have been talking every day. I haven't told my brother this. I talked to him one time since then, maybe. So he didn't like that I addressed. I was like, I believe in Jesus now. Mm-hmm. And I just kept it real. We're gonna go to church. I have to have somebody because if we're not equally yoked, I can't. And my brother scared me. He was like, "What you think the man gonna be in there saying? Num your ho ring yo yo, num your ho ring yo yo." So okay, and I was kind of offended that he had.
And then somebody else said Tina Turner was a Buddhist. Yes. And you like her music.
But I ain't married either. And I'm kind of offended because the man ain't called to talk. He kind of been. I think he was offended that I talked about Jesus. But go ahead, y'all go.
Well, I was going to suggest what you already did, and that is to probe to try and get more detail on. Okay, help me to understand what you do believe, and let's see if we can find some common ground. But he gave you the answer that you need by the fact that he has not called you, and he changed the way in which the two of you were communicating. That's the biggest red flag to me, more so than his religious beliefs. Because if we're having a conversation now that is making you uncomfortable and you're going to shut down on me and not communicate, then what happens when we have children and we're trying to determine what's right as far as the religious belief of those children? Are you going to shut down and we can't come to the table of compromise? And so he wasn't secure enough. And here's what I think about this, brother. I think that he wasn't even secure enough to really know what he believed. He's still trying to figure out what it is that
I agree.
And he wants to practice what he believes. So he's confused.
Yeah.
And he can't lead you anywhere if he's confused because you have a mindset of where you want to go. And he's still trying to figure out, he's on the struggle bus trying to figure out where he is in his religious beliefs. And so therefore, the two of you cannot walk together because you're unequally yoked from the very beginning. And the fact that he's not willing to commit to communicate.
Yeah. Go ahead and give Mika the address of Macedonian Missionary Baptist Church so she can know where exactly to send this love offering.
What's the cash app? I'll send them.
Love offering just got so good it ain't even funny. Gary, did you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, and again, this goes back to what we talked about last week, and not you accept somebody for who they are.
Exactly.
You live true to your own values and your values are non-negotiable. And outside of what those values and those shared values, what those shared values should be, if anybody deviates from it, then you know that's the red flag that you need to understand this is not going to work. Too many times we negotiate our values. Too many times we substitute our values and we say, well, he's a good guy and he's good looking, he's got a good job, but he doesn't believe in the God that I believe in. So I can make it work. And deep down, you're having that feeling that, something's just not right. And you might get down the road and you're married and you got 2 kids and you still have that underlying feeling that this is not right. This is not what I really wanted. And as those minor difficulties start to happen in your life that then turn into major difficulties, then where your religion and your spirituality, you're supposed to lean on it. Now you're in 2 separate courts and you have no foundation to lean on to get you through those tough times because you negotiated in the beginning. So I commend you for pushing that aside and saying, no, we can't. And it may not be that you look that far down the road, but it was the best thing that you probably could have happened, because down the road, it definitely would have presented a major issue.
Yeah. All right. We got a couple comments. So that's good, Pastor Dawkins. That comes from Alina.
Oh, hey.
Who said that. And then Anguita said, tell it, Mika, testimony can help others. And let's see. Oh, now she got Lena, your comments are showing a Facebook user, not your name. We got her teaching, folks. Okay, so final aspect of this religion aspect of the marriage, right, and how it impacts divorce, and then we'll go somewhere else. We're gonna get to some of the benefits after that. And that is divorced pastors. We kind of gave our thoughts last week on that, but I want to get the divorced pastor perspective from a pastor.
Well, that's
I love it. I want to quit right there for a minute and just let that. Hey, sometimes them gasp and that exasperation and them sighs, oh, they worth some money. Go ahead.
I actually had a conversation this weekend with someone, and we were talking about how the divorce rate seemed to be climbing among pastors, and not just pastors that are new to this, but pastors that are supposed to be true to this, that are well tenured.
Okay.
And so I just have to go by what the Bible says. The Bible says that if a man can't govern the affairs of his own house, and when he comes to the church,
that hurt everybody to say, but it's like all us was in a fight with Mike Tyson at the same time. Gary doubled over. My slob came out of my mouth this way, and Mika just put her head down. She didn't want to make eye contact no more. Woo,
that's biblical. It's the biblical foundation. There are 2 offices in the Bible that it talks about and gives qualifications. That is the deacon and that of the bishop/pastor. And it talks about how the husband, he is to be the husband of one wife. And then there are specific instructions even given in the Bible how a husband is to treat the wife. And then it talks about how Christ loved the church. So the pastor has a great responsibility, because eyes are constantly watching what you do. And how can you counsel? How can you direct? How can you advise others about how to make a marriage work when you're not walking what you're talking? And I think it's critical. Yes, there will come times in which, as a pastor, you have challenges. We have challenges just like anyone else. I can, if you want to, you could probably bring my wife on the show, and she'll tell you that every day she's not 100% in love with DP Dawkins based on his actions. Okay, there will be some days in which she's upset with me.
Yeah, because Bobby Ray been out.
Yes, because there are times that I act like Bobby Ray Dawkins.
Right.
I mentioned him earlier, so I'll just go there. There are times that I act like Bobby Ray Dawkins.
Yeah.
But the thing is, we have to be willing to communicate. We have to be willing to commit and make the necessary changes and adjustments to make the marriage work. And as a leader, as a pastor, if you're going to counsel others as to how to make their marriage work, you have to be an example. And it comes with prayer. It comes in understanding that marriage is a give and take, and understanding what the true principles of marriage really are. And you also have to understand accountability and responsibility. Let me just drop that in. And since I'm talking about the Bible, if we go back to Genesis, you got to look at the first marriage between Adam and Eve. Before Adam had a wife, he had accountability and responsibility. Before Adam had a wife, he had a job. His job was to name the animals. Before Adam had a wife, he had a place to stay. It was called the Garden of Eden. And so when we look at and examine the life of Adam, we understand and see accountability and responsibility. And so we have to have accountability and responsibility on an individual level. And then when we're committed to each other, we both have to hold each other accountable and be responsible in those vows in which we make.
Yeah. Wow. So Gary, you see why last week when I said when this joker preach at funerals, even if it's people I don't know, I want to know the date, time, and place so I can go.
Yeah.
And let me put it like this. And he let me put it like this. This is the reserved, calm delivery right now. He know he on TV. So he's just delivering this real easy. But when something about getting behind that pulpit, it take it to another level. But I'm saying, man. All right, so now we're gonna turn it. We're gonna go to Gary and want to just let him break down this aspect of it. So we're gonna answer the question. Wait a minute, before I do that, let me make sure there's no comments. I gotta wrap up. Okay, yeah, we got Ben in the building. He just said good evening. That's the gentleman that put the BS in BS3. We also have we said it's best for the pastor to be married. If not, those sisters we after 24/7. I love it. This may be Lena. She goes, a lot of churches, the women after the pastor, even with the wife. Wow. And then being said, sometimes it's, I love you, but I don't like you right now. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. That describes Lena's mama to me. She always say, I love you, but I don't like you. And that's fair. I can't blame her for that. But okay, Gary talked about this, and we're gonna answer this question. Because Gary made a good point. He's talked about all the negativity out there about marriage, and you don't have to do this, you don't have to do that. You know, you ain't got to put up with him doing this. Girl, you make your own money. You make more money than him anyway. You all this, all that. What are some of the benefits of getting married and staying together? We don't talk about those enough. Lily last week made a very good point. We winning at everything else. Let's win at marriage. All right. So, Gary, what are some benefits of getting married and staying together? What did you want to share with us on that?
So, a couple of statistics that kind of stick out, and I'll start with the financial benefits. Financially, you're sharing bills. So you just imagine if you make $50,000 a year, but your spouse also makes $50,000 a year, then that's $100,000 worth of income that's coming into the house versus you trying to raise maybe 1 to 2 kids on $100,000 versus you trying to raise 1 to 2 kids on $50,000 worth of income. And if you're lucky, some child support that probably may equate to another 10 to 12,000 out of that. If you're
lucky.
Yeah, if you're lucky. We're wasting a lot of money by being separate. And this is an interesting statistic this is an interesting statistic. We said that I heard this. I think you may have quoted this last week, but the percentage of marriages has declined since 1960, and we contribute that to social welfare programs and whatnot. And so it's basically about half of what it was, or maybe even a third of what it was in 1960. Right. Well, if you look at those numbers, the amount of capital and or net worth, then the amount of net worth that we have as Black people, it's also diminished since 1960. So we owned 1% of wealth in 1960. We only own 0.5% of wealth in 2023.
Isn't that
so?
It could be a correlation.
Where is wealth gained the easiest? In household, in purchasing a house. But if you've got 2 incomes that are split, trying to purchase 2 different or paying rent in 2 different places, economically you're further behind than if you got married and just built your nest egg together. So that's one glaring statistic that came out of the conversation that we had last week.
I want Pastor, if you got anything on this, especially since we're on the financial aspect of it, and I know you get to see some folks and are probably just like you've counseled people from a spiritual standpoint. I'm sure you've counseled several from a financial standpoint. So if you got anything to add, please don't hesitate to pop in.
Yes, I would agree with what he's saying from a financial standpoint. Together, we can build something, and we can satisfy our personal needs and our needs with each other, our needs together. Because when you're combining those two incomes, then your quality of life is different.
Mhm.
And if you would look at if you look at what happens when we combine our assets, not only are we combining our assets from a financial standpoint, it basically gives us not only more buying power, but it also gives us the ability to now where we can really raise a family and have a situation to where we can start building the right values, the right morals. Now, some people will argue and say, well, you know what? Money doesn't aid in creating a system to where you have good morals and values. It certainly does, because it may allow you to move into a better school district.
Right.
It
Yeah.
may allow you
Yeah.
to be in a place where you can be away from a city with a high crime level, because now we've combined our income and we can move to a place to where it's going to be more beneficial for raising a family the right way.
Ooh, love it, man.
Mhm.
Love
Oh,
it, man. Love it.
it,
Just a couple quick
I'm
comments, Gary. Let me get these comments in, and then I'm gonna come right back to you. Lena said, "Helpmate, friend, hands, love it." And Ben said, "The songwriter says it's cheaper to keep them." And Weeda, he talking right up your alley right there, because that's your kind of music. And then we got Grace in the building, also of BS3 Network, and Life Happens. So make sure y'all support her too. Okay, Gary, go ahead.
No, I also there are minor things like if you car insurance is cheaper if you're married.
Yeah.
There's better access to credit. You get higher credit. You get higher loans when you're married. You get
Tax
lower
advantages,
interest
right?
rates, tax
Advantages,
advantages
right?
when you're married. And to get into the children, and look at this stat right here. Children that are raised in single parent households are 6 times more likely to exhibit emotional and behavioral problems. 6 times more likely. So we wonder what's going on with the kids, and we can say that all the time. What's happening with these kids? Well, that's what's happening with these kids. If
Yeah, man.
the kids that are raised in 2 parent households are performing better on every level, they have higher GPAs, they have lower behavioral issues, they go to college at higher rates. If you have all of these positive things happening, then these are the things that should be touted. And we give more light to the negative things of being married than we do to the positive things. And most people have never heard of some of these statistics.
Yeah,
And it's
I
not
love it,
something
man.
that's actually brought to the light.
I love it. Y'all notice how Gary's saying it with his chest too? That means he's serious about it. He ain't. I mean, Gary. I mean, he's saying it with a little bass, and he sat at the edge of his chair. So that's how I want you to stand on it too, man. Yeah, that's big. A lot of people don't think about that. I'll admit. Think about this for a second. When we talked about this, when the subject came up and stuff like that, I hadn't looked at it that deep on those areas, right? In terms of benefits and some of those statistics, man. So I think that's super strong. And I think that should serve as motivation for some folks who see this to be like, okay. And again, we gave the caveat last week. We understand. We're not talking about if he putting his hands on you. We're not saying to keep yourself in harm's way. We're not talking about those situations. But if you're just arguing about whether the ketchup need to be in the refrigerator or the pantry, if you're just arguing about whether the toilet tissue come over the top or under the bottom, if you're arguing about the way he squeezed the toothpaste and he don't ever squeeze from the bottom, he always squeeze from the middle. If you're talking about the fact that he washed the dishes but he didn't rinse the soap out the sink like Gary did, y'all need to get over it. Y'all need to get over it. Go ahead, Gary. Anything else you want on this?
I just want to make sure that we are looking at these numbers, empirical numbers, because again, these are some of the things. Marriage used to be a contract that said, when I take you on as a wife, I'm taking you on as a, you actually used to have a dowry that one parent paid to the other, and that was to ensure the lineage. It was to make sure that the family was that the family was going to be supported. It was and also that so that both families could actually then benefit from being married to one another. So these families, it wasn't just two individuals, it was these two families that were married, and it was a financial issue more so than it was an individual like and dislike. So, and it's not to say that because my son marries a girl from down the street that now me and that family, we have to be financially married together. Yeah. But the concept of now my family is expanded and now I have more access to more things because this family has been expanded.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And so therefore it's to our benefit that you get married and you marry somebody that can actually bring, I guess, I hate the term bring something to the table, but bring something to the table.
Hey, that's fair, man. See, the reason why I think you kind of feeling it on that is because it's been used in such a negative way so much lately. What you bringing to the table? That is a valid question. It's just being asked with such venom, seemingly.
Yeah.
Which is why whenever we now need to ask a valid question, we feel some type of way about it. So that's okay to determine what's being brought to the table. That used to be a big deciding factor in marriage. It used to be the number one deciding factor. You got 2 sheep or 23. You know what I'm saying?
Not sheep.
That was the, So now, Mika, Pastor, anybody now, what are some benefits of being married that we might not have touched on?
I love the statistics that Gary gave us. I love those numbers. But I think also, since we are talking about Black marriage and some of the challenges, I think even to the extent of staying together, it benefits the next generation because now they see a strong marriage. Now you can be that individual that can help the next generation understand what does it take for a couple to maintain a relationship, to stay together. Now you can be the one to help the next generation, and hopefully then they can return the favor and help the next generation, and we can start solving some of the issues that we have within Black marriages. And so I think that's also big because from time to time, I'll have someone young that will say, how long have you been married? And when I say I've been married for 24 years, they'll say, how old are you? And I tell them how old I am. And it's just amazing to them. And I think 24 years is not that long a time. But when you look at the divorce rate, you see, as my son now calls me his age, that's fossil. Okay. So it's just the opportunity of giving back. I think there is some societal good that ties in with the financial benefits of that as well. And then when we look at our individual needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you look at every single one of those, and if you go back and look at psychology and you see what Maslow's hierarchy of needs are for every individual, and I did look at those and I had them in front of me, but I don't have them now. But every single one of those can be met and exceeded when you connect with someone in marriage that can help you along the way. You are more self-confident when you have someone that's in your corner saying, you can do it, baby, keep going. You have that need of love and belonging that is met because you have someone that will truly love you for who you are.
Right.
And so I think that it goes a long way in helping not just some areas, but watch this. It also helps in the area of mental health because mental health is one of the challenges that we see within the African-American marriage as well. Yeah. And so it helps so many different areas from being united, being connected in marriage, and having the benefits of a long-lasting relationship. And I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not trying to get to know someone at this stage in the game. I'm thankful that I already know someone, and I'm trying to make it work with the one that I have and not get to know someone new. And starting over is not always the right decision. Right. You know, you can easily look outside and see that the grass might be greener on the other side. But as an old man once told me, if your grass is greener on the other side, then put some fertilizer on your own grass. And so we have to learn how to
I love it, man.
To cultivate what we have and understand that there are some benefits in staying together and trying to make a relationship work.
Love it, love it. I want you to give that Maslow's again one more time because somebody to
Maslow's
look.
hierarchy of needs.
Okay, and I'm somebody when I said if somebody needed. Okay, so I'm pretty familiar with it, but I want to be able to look more specifically on that because I think that's big. And as y'all know, when I take notes and stuff like this is just a different path. So I want to see if y'all think one of the needs is y'all see that little word I got right there in that little box.
Oh my gosh. We
You know,
see it.
is that one of? Let me put it real big. Is that one of the benefits of being married, getting married, and staying together?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely, it is.
I love the
yeah.
fact that it was a pastor that asked the
Absolutely.
question first.
Hey, one of the commands that God gave Adam and Eve was to be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah, that's right.
And when we think about it, now I've got Maslow's hierarchy of needs pulled up. Okay, so one of the things that this says from a psychological standpoint is that everyone has. It's the third category. If you're working your way from the bottom up, I'll give you all of them. First of all, you have those physiological needs. Those are your needs such as air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing. All right. Then you have safety needs, which is personal security, employment, resources, health, property. Sex fits into this category, King Doc. It is love and belonging. It talks about friendship, intimacy, family, and sense of connection. So it fits within Maslow's hierarchy of needs that states that every individual needs a good balance of every category. And then the next one is esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, and freedom. And then the last category is self-actualization. It is desire to become the most that one can be. And so if you tie all that together, if you have someone in your corner
Yeah.
that's a part of, as I oftentimes say, when it comes to me and my wife, if you listen to the broadcast, you'll hear me say quite often, Team Dawkins. This is a Team Dawkins. Okay? When you have someone that's in your corner that is supporting you and nurturing you, then you can fulfill every single one of those categories to an extent that you could never do it alone.
Yeah, love it. So Mika and Gary, Pastor, done gave me some new material for when I'm at the bar having me a drink and an appetizer and a pretty young lady sitting next to me. I'll say, can you assist me with Maslow's hierarchy of needs tonight? I got a need of love and belonging. Can you assist me with that?
She's gonna get up.
She's gonna say what that is. You don't know what bar I be at. So that's
I was gonna say if she says what that is,
yeah, this is the southern section. What that is. So when I asked that question, Ben said about sex being one of the benefits. He says, "Hell yeah!"
Hey, come on, Ben.
And then he said, "When you have a helpmate, that goes a long way." And then I think this is a strong comment that we don't give enough credit to. We say it sometimes, and that's cute to hear, but I don't know that we really understand that it is powerful, man. If if you've been a part of that before, man, that's a powerful thing. And I'm telling you, I agree with that wholeheartedly, man. Wholeheartedly. Okay, so we just got a few minutes left, but I do want to touch on this before we go. And again, we still got enough meat. We got enough meat for a part 3 if we want to. And guess what? How about me adding this factor to it? How about a Pastor AJ Jones on this one, Mika? And you don't think he can add some salt to this thing?
Right.
Okay, so I want to end with this one, and then we'll give some final thoughts. But I want to know about your friends, and I want to start with Mika on this one. Yeah. How do your friends influence your marriage?
I'm gonna speak on the angle of being a single friend to a lot of people that are married.
Okay.
I constantly, if I go out with my girls or if we are doing something, I always say, "Did you tell your husband? Does your husband know? Is this okay with your husband?" I try to be that friend that is not always going out with your married friend, because that's not cute and that's not cool. And you also want to respect you want to make sure that you respect their marriage. No, don't call your married friend, even if her husband is cool with her going out. No, don't call her to go out all the time. I think your friends have a great influence on your marriage. And I have married friends that, you know, they'll call me, even though I'm not married, they'll say, what do you think about this? And I'll say, you wrong, sis. You didn't have to do that. Or no, if I was him, I would have said the same thing. So I think your friends have a powerful influence on your marriage, and wanting it, you know, you need to have people in your circle that want you to succeed in your marriage, even if they're married or not. Just my angle.
Okay, good points. Have you ever had a friend that said, "No, you know, y'all, we don't need to be going out all the time, or whatever"? And she goes, "Girl, no, I ain't worried about that. Let's go." Have you ever had a friend that you were trying to look out for, but they rejected that and say, "No, we finna go"?
It wasn't. It was a coworker back in the day, and I rolled my eyes. I rolled my eyes because we're not associates anymore. But I used to say, no, I'm not going out with you. Or don't you have a family at home? She's now divorced
Yeah,
and still in the streets.
yeah, got you. She for the streets. That's what they say. Gary, how does your friends influence your marriage?
Oh man, like Mika said, they influence it exponentially. I just again looking at another. This is not necessarily statistics, but it does say that having friends who are divorced increases your risk of divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this firsthand. This is something that I experienced. My wife was hanging out with with all of her friends who are divorced, and next thing you know, we're on the verge of being divorced.
Yeah, next
Because
thing you know, your ass leaving soap in the sink after you done washed the dishes. And she like, they told me. That's why she left Reginald. He left some Ivory Spring.
Really?
You know, and I'm gonna tell you this, and this is true in the sense that I started listening to problems that she was exposing me to in their relationships.
Wow.
And then when we started having problems, it was a lot of stuff that tended to be what other people were having.
Yeah.
That weren't really our problems. They were
before,
just problems that were magnified by other people's problems. It wasn't anything that could be tolerated that couldn't be tolerated at all. But all of a sudden, because other people had those issues were brought to the forefront of my household.
Yeah.
And so it really had a big influence. So, you know, there is some power in spending time with those old aunts and uncles that have been married for 40, 50, 60 years. There is some knowledge in that, and just that whole concept of birds of a feather flock together. That's not just a negative thing. That's also a positive thing. If you're hanging out with people who have strong relationships, strong marriages, then your marriage will be strong just by almost osmosis, just by being in the vicinity, learning from them. But if you hang around dysfunctional people, you will be dysfunctional, and you will be headed down the same road that those dysfunctional people are headed down. So without a doubt, they have definitely an influence.
Love it. Pastor, okay, let's get this. You know, I want you to tell us how friends influence your marriage, but I also want you to touch a little bit, if you can, or if it comes up, if the Spirit leads you there, on just friends in general in terms of how we see them as Christians, because how you see friends in general as a Christian does impact how it affects your marriage, if that makes any sense.
So I'm going to try not to take too long, but I'm going to go down a different path.
Take the time, man.
And my different path is that, yes, friends do influence your marriage, but they absolutely should not. And here's the reason why.
Love it.
I did some research before coming on as well, and here are some of the reasons for divorce, and I wrote them down. Career choice, parenting differences, division of household labor, family relationships, friend relationships, and health choices. So when you see that family relationships and friend relationships are a couple of the leading causes of divorce, yes, friends influence your marriage, but they absolutely should not. One of the symbols that I discussed during a marriage is simply this. The ring is a closed circle, which is a symbol of a closed union. So whatever happens between me and my wife, that's between us, and it should not really be shared among friends who have opinion or family, because you've got to keep your friends and your family out of your marriage, because all the times they do not understand. And I'm not needing a friend or a family member to validate my decision within a marriage, because validation doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. Because just because I have the right to do something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So when we think about that, friends do influence our marriage, which means also we have to be careful. Like they said, I agree with them on. We have to be very careful with the friends that we choose to allow to give us advice.
Yeah.
Psalms 1 talks about taking advice, and so we should give advice and receive advice from those individuals that are godly, and make sure that our advice is not coming from friends. And somebody wrote something today that talks about you got to watch the language of friends, because they can actually be haters in disguise.
Yeah.
She thinks she's something with her little old car, or a little old job.
Right.
Anytime you see somebody put little old in front of it,
Yeah.
that's not encouraging you. That's bringing you down.
Yeah.
And so we got to
How
learn the
things
language
going
of
on
the
your little
difference
job?
between friends and haters.
Yeah. Did I interrupt you, Pastor?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
No, I said, how things going on your little job?
Yeah. So we just have to be careful who we let in our friends. And some people that we call friends aren't actually friends at all. They're associates.
Right.
And people call others friends because they validate you and tell you when you're right. But a friend is not something. And here's the other thing. You find out who your friends are when times are bad.
Yeah.
Your enemies are revealed when you start having a level of success, but your friends are revealed when you struggle.
That's good.
Man. We just said, if you have some haters in your friend circle, yes, it will have a big influence on your marriage, no doubt about it. And I think during the dating process, sometimes people don't look at that enough. As I pay close attention to folks' friends.
Yes,
I'm not kidding.
indeed. Yes,
I pay
indeed.
close attention to who you kicking it with, and if every last one of your friends, all of them got problems, you was on with Sheila, now you're on with Stephanie, now you're on with Shirley. Number one, why all your friends got S names? And number two, why they all
This is dumb.
and number two, why they all got, I mean, it's like, dude, ain't none of your friends having a good time right now? Ain't having no success in life. But in all seriousness, man, we do not pay close enough attention to those influences, to them as individuals. How they're influenced as individuals by those friends will give you a good indication of how they're going to influence them in the relationship with you. So, yeah, I don't think we pay close enough attention to you. But I think overall, Pastor D.P. Dawkins is right yet again. They shouldn't influence your marriage. And that's big. And I've heard him say that closed circle thing before. So, wow. We've come to another end of this one, another end of a show. Again, that is Black Marriage, Black Divorce, Part 2. Again, had Gary come back for a second helping. And then we had Pastor Dawkins come join us as well. And so it brings us up to our final thoughts. But again, there's so much more meat on this bones. I got 3 questions left in the thing, and got plenty more notes. And in the accent and the aspect of some of those factors that he Pastor kind of mentioned a few of them, but we could have dove into those a little bit more too. But let's go ahead and give our final thoughts and wrap this one up. We'll start with the educator, Queen Mika.
Oh, okay. I want to thank the
Is you gonna date that boy that we talked about? That booty?
Did you hear my cousin say? He said, "Y'all already showed you who he was. Believe me."
Pastor, I told Mika, y'all gonna have that fat Chinese man sitting at y'all doorway. And when you walk in, you gotta set some oranges down.
You see why I can't talk to him? He don't take it seriously. He's like, I know what to get y'all for Christmas, a little fat booty.
Yeah, y'all gonna have incense burning and stuff. You gotta come in, take your shoes off, and slice an orange right there. We supposed to eat this or take this? That's what the kids gonna be saying. We supposed to eat these and leave these. Go ahead, Mika.
I can't.
You know that'll confuse little black kids. They won't know what to do with it. Is we supposed to eat these peppermints by this fat man?
Thank you, Pastor, thank you, Gary. I can't even give these final thoughts and be serious. And I appreciate y'all for coming on. And I just want to say, I want to, doing shows like this, I think it's positive because we give another spin on what things should look like in a Black marriage. And I enjoyed that both Pastor and Gary gave benefits that could really break generational curses and help us succeed as a Black community.
Yeah, agree. All right. The philosopher, Gary, talk to us. Final thoughts, sir.
Hey, I'm gonna leave you with this this story real quick. And I was at the barbershop one time, and an old guy was in there. We were all kind of in the midst of a conversation, and the guy was walking out of the door, and somebody says, "Hey, hey, by the way, how long have you been married?" He said, "Man, I've been married 55 years." And they said, wow, man. And one guy said, wow, 55 years, happily married, 55 years. He said, hey, I didn't say happily. He said, so everybody he said, it ain't all roses. He said, there are some days when this ain't, I don't like us, you don't like me, but we managed to get through it. So it ain't all happy 55 years, but we made it. And I thought, man, that is the way to look at this thing. That is a common ground way to look at marriage. It ain't always rosy, but you keep your nose to the grind and you will make it through it. So that's my final thought. Hopefully it encourages somebody.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Very good.
Pastor DP Doc.
I'm just gonna leave you with three words: leave, love, and live. We have to learn to, number one, leave those things. If we're going to focus on making a marriage work, we've got to leave our selfish desires and our selfish ambitions behind. Yeah. Not saying that you lose yourself, but that you find yourself in the balance of the marriage, that we love unconditionally. That means that in spite of and despite of it, and that's the way that God loves us. We have to learn how to love each other in a marriage the same way that Christ loves the church, and in fact that he gave his life for us. And then we have to live understanding this, that we're not promised the next moment. We have to live with unexpected choices, knowing that the choices that you make, live in the moment, and you never know where unexpected choices that you make will take you.
Yeah, I didn't know at first. He said some good stuff there, obviously, but I thought at first he was reciting Eminem. You got to lose yourself in the moment. The moment you own it, you never let again. You only get one shot to not let. I don't know. He ain't all. His pastor tell you he ain't always been saved, so it wouldn't be far fetched for him to know Eminem.
I promise you, Eminem didn't have anything to do with it.
Hey, I'm just checking. So for me, my final thoughts are inspired by Gary because he wanted to go to the barbershop. I want to go to the barbershop. And again, I think, man, if I could only explain to people, sometimes even women, because they haven't experienced this for us, that men have. But man, if I could only tell you how much goes on at the barbershop in terms of men and fellowship and whatnot, and in a positive situation like the old school barbershops we went to, where you got Wallace Starks and what's the guy over there off Clark? Why is his name?
Arnick, Mr.
Arnick, and all them, right? And so I was at the barbershop one day, and we had this old cat. I wish Craig was here to tell this story because he tell it much better than me. But this old cat was in there, and we were talking about marriage, relationships, all that other kind of stuff. And Mr. Johnny was quiet. And so Craig and somebody asked Mr. Johnny, I know you've been married for a long time, but you ain't saying nothing. And Mr. Johnny looked at him, and you know how old folks can be deliberate before they start talking and whatnot. He sat up on his chair and he said, boy, me and that old guy been married for 47 years. He goes, and if I had to give you one piece of advice, one secret to my success, you got to learn to be quiet when you feel like talking. So he like, she done made you mad. She done told Gary, you ain't wiped that soap out that sink. And you know Gary felt like talking. And he said, sometimes you got to be quiet when you feel like talking. And I think that'll keep a whole bunch of marriages together. Just be quiet sometimes. That's part of your pick your battles thing, right? So, again, we thank you for being a part of this one. Again, Black marriage, Black divorce. Let's make it Black marriage, Black legacy next time. Let's make it Black marriage, Black influence. Let's make it Black marriage, Black power. Let's make it Black marriage, Black encouragement, as opposed to Black marriage, Black divorce. As Lily said, let's win that marriage. Again, we appreciate all the viewers. We got my son, one of the twins in the building. He goes, good show as always. Hey, appreciate you, son. Appreciate you, son. And we will see you next week on another episode of Queen 3 and King. I'm not 100. Let me say this. I'm contemplating on a topic being, we got the seasoned queen, we got the educated queen, and we got the baby queen. I'm thinking about the mama queen and bringing her on to get interviewed by, I want to see if AJ Jones can do it. I want him to interview her about all the things that happened with us growing up. Like I want him to tell what's the funniest whooping story you got? What's the funniest you had to go to the school story? All this other kind of stuff. What's the funniest relationship story when they first got, that kind of stuff. So that's what I want. I hadn't confirmed that with my mama's availability. She go to sleep at about 6 o'clock.
Don't do my mama.
And I hadn't confirmed about AJ's availability, but I'm gonna check. That's where I'd like to go. And Pat, she of course told me, she called me the other day and said, "Yo, Aunt Freddie called you. Called me and said she needed me to call you and tell you she love you so much for giving me this new car." I'm like, that ain't why she loved me so much. She loved me so much because that's my auntie and that's my cousin. She just happy, I'm like, you just want to tell me that people are happy you got this new car. But anyway, again, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Queen 3 and King, and we will catch y'all next week. And regardless what we talk about, it gonna be good. Y'all say bye.
Bye, y'all. Are we smiling or what we doing?
The Queen Bee has arrived.
We'll show out then. So I'm gonna start with both of y'all's hands right here.
Look for my thumb.
Look for your thumb.
Like if you can see my thumb